Hello, my loves, and welcome back for another episode of Tea with Tui. I am joined again with my beautiful friend, Amanda. Just to give you guys the lowdown, this is the first time that we're seeing one another since having our reading together. I have no idea what has transpired since. And so we thought we'd give you guys an episode where we get the lowdown of exactly what's happening. Let me give you a little highlight on some of the fun bits of our reading. I can hear very clearly from her, there's very judgmental tone that men are incompetent. These men that have come into your life have come in as guides or mentors or teachers to remind you of what it is you're here to heal and release. And unfortunately, like past lovers, your current lover, and your dad are all here to remind you of that feeling that men are incompetent, that you need to protect yourself. You can't rely on them. If you ask them to do something, they're going to get it wrong. Woo, she is feisty. She's feisty. This is why you work better on your own. Oh, was she widowed? Do you have this deep-seated fear that men are going to leave? I asked you that because your husband in that Victorian era died. He went away and he died and he never came back. So you had to figure it all out on your own, and no one ever was up to his level, which means that that naturally means you'll have high standards in love. High standards will probably mean that you're very guarded and you test your people too. Yeah. Interesting. Have you got like this like feeling like they're gonna leave or something like that, or like they're not gonna come back? Okay. The past life issue.
You
Yeah.
know, when I'll just like intervene here. I won't
Oh,
give you
you're
any
so
information.
fine.
I won't give you any information yet. But when we were speaking yesterday, and I was telling you about Date with Destiny and what came up for me,
Yeah.
the underlying old story for me was the reason why I behave the way that I do, where it's very independent, masculine, have to protect myself, look after myself, was because I believe men are going to leave me. That is what I
Shut
wrote in
up.
my book.
Shut the fuck up. That is literally this past life that we're talking about. Oh my goosebumps. All goosebumps. Wow.
Like,
Well,
wrote that in my book.
oh my God. Welcome to Tea with Tui, the podcast where I spill the tea on all things mystical and spiritual. Whether you are a ghost story enthusiast looking for a good vibe or simply curious about your spiritual journey, this is the podcast for you. My name is Tui Tikiri. I am your host and guide, and we, my love, are going on a wild adventure together. Welcome back. Thank you so much for being here again. I love it.
Thanks for having me. Oh my gosh, I am excited for today's episode.
I'm so interested because typically what happens with me is I'll give a reading, people will leave, and I don't really hear things until after the
Mm.
fact. I'll have people once in a blue moon saying, this came true, or I loved this, but I never get immediate feedback. So I'm really excited
Ooh.
to hear
Wow.
the good, the bad, the ugly. It totally does not faze me. I'm really excited about this.
Let's dive in, shall we?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Whew.
So tell me, as a virgin, pop in your cherry. um, what was it like? Was it what you expected? Was it different? What were your thoughts maybe of what you might experience before the reading, and then how were they after the session?
Good question. So I really didn't know what to expect. I actually didn't go in with any expectations. I had a feeling you were the real deal, but I wasn't, I was still a bit skeptical. And so I totally poker faced the whole time. I was like internally telling my face, don't react when she
I
says
love it.
something. She told me to stay neutral. And I think I shared with you before we did the reading that I've very intentionally not told you a lot about what's been going on for me and in my life over the last couple of months, knowing that we were going to get around to doing this reading kind of in the near future. So,
Yes. And can I say, like, I love that sincerely. I feel like even as a reader, it helps. One, I don't have to work twice as hard to prove that it's spirit actually conversing with you, and I'm just the middle person. But two, it also makes like when we're doing the hits, there is nothing in my mind where logically I could have known that information myself. I'm not sure that people realize that when they're going for readings. Like sometimes less is best. Less is best. And
yes.
that's definitely what I love with my clients.
I'm not sure how much you really did know about me going into it, but there were a few key details or topics, shall we say, that I was hoping would come up that I very intentionally not told you anything about. Um, and they did. So
Love that.
yeah, so that was interesting. So yeah, like I didn't have any expectations as such. I was very open to what was going to happen, what we were going to discuss, and just, yeah, really listening.
So let's dive into the topics. What were they? What like because I love that. It's typically when I'm with clients, I will say, is there anything that they don't want to talk about? And I think that's really important to ask. For instance, I never really am interested in knowing about my love life. I talk about anything else under the sun, but there's just some things that I really want to be surprised in. And my love life is one of those areas. And
Mm,
so I feel like it's important to go to that space with clients asking that. And then really, I just like to leave it up to spirit. I like to do that. Some clients don't, but I just figure have whatever questions you have. If that person's the real deal, spirit's already going to know what you want to talk about and they will bring it up. So I love that this was
ooh.
your experience. Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. That I didn't know that spirit would already know that I wanted to talk about certain things. So, yeah, so that's cool.
Yeah. So, maybe to help you understand, and anybody who might be new to the spiritual realm, we all come with spirit guides, spirit teams, and even to extend beyond that, we all have ancestors and loved ones on the other side who are constantly watching out for us. Like we are at no time ever on our own. Like really, we're never on our own. There is always somebody that is with us. And so
Mm,
when I'm conversing with the other side, my team, spirit guides, angels, whatever that might be, is talking to not just your energy or your soul. We're also converting with your spirit team. So your spirit team will guide me, but not even that, it might even be that your energy is guiding me to the parts, and I am actively, I also want to say, looking for the areas where you might need the most support, the most clarity, and where you might be challenged more, in this
mm,
moment, in this year, in this lifetime. It's different for each and every client, but that is typically the leading question that I ask when I'm tuning in to somebody or when I am conversing with their loved ones on the other side. Where do they need my support most? And how can we maximize this experience to get just to milk the most out of their session?
mm.
So I'm constantly on the lookout for that sort of stuff.
That's so interesting because I love that we did this via Zoom because I
Yeah.
got to actually see you as well as hear you. And it was like you had this you turned into a completely different person. I know you just on a friendship level
Yeah.
as like this high energy energizer bunny who's like, you know, on four different topics all at once. And it's always such a ride having a conversation with you.
Love you.
But it was like the moment that you, what do you call it? Like
Tuned in.
tuned
Yep.
in. Look at me go. I'm learning. When
Love it.
you tuned in, You were like grounded, you were a lot softer. There weren't many times that you even looked at the camera and looked at me. You were like looking around the room, your eyes were up, your head was moving all over the place, and your eyes were shifting. And from what I could see, it was almost as if you actually could visually see things there in the room and you were looking at them, and you knew that I was here with you, but you were more just like having a conversation with whatever was happening in your room and just delivering that to me. It was the most bizarre experience.
Love that it was bizarre. That's so awesome. That's so
And then
awesome.
once we finished, we kind of didn't say, like, okay, that's the reading over. Now let's talk about it. It just, there was just an energy shift all of a sudden. And I knew, oh, okay, that's the reading over. But we continued our conversation for like probably another half an hour afterwards. And your energy changed back to the Tui that I know.
Oh,
And yeah, there was a real energy shift in you. It was really cool to
yeah.
experience.
I love that. I've never heard that before. That is so cool. I really love that.
Mm.
And yes, you're exactly spot on with the way that you're describing it. I do see them in my room. Like I see them all around me and they're almost segregated. So I know, okay, if I'm looking over here, we might be looking at the past, we might be looking at the future over to my right. Or even when we have visitors, there might be loved ones behind me, there might be spirit guides or whatever that might be, but they are always in those spaces and I am communicating with all of them. It's seriously like having sometimes a five-way conversation,
Wow.
even though it's just us two. There's a whole team of people that I see in the room. There's apparitions of visions that I see in the room. Yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a whole
And can
thing.
I ask, I'm so
Yeah.
curious to know, what does that actually look like for you? Like, if you were to see a person, for example,
Yeah.
is that like they're literally in human form in front of you in 3D? You can see it in color detail, like as if they're right there. Or is it a bit hazy, like what we imagine a ghost is? Like, how do you see these?
I love it. Great question. So it really depends on who it is. So there were like, for instance, when I was 11 and 12, like I would see spirits as if they were physically there in front of me, and that could be really
Wow.
confronting. As I've developed with my gift, I feel like that's spirit's way of saying we are real. It is real. And as I've developed, I haven't needed to see things in detail like that, but I
Mm.
still do. It's very common for me, even to this day, to like see people just sitting in my lounge room, like, and I'll have to say to them, hey, let me help you cross. Like, you're not meant to be here.
Oh my
Or,
God.
sometimes I'll be watching a movie with my daughter and I'll look towards the corridor and there'll be somebody standing there like looking at me like a freaking weirdo. And I still react like a human and it's still like it's jolting sometimes because I'm not actively tuned in. It's
Yes,
just,
yes.
oh, okay. So it really depends. And sometimes there are reasons why I won't see people, and it can be part of their personality traits. So I've had people who have come in on the other side and I can't see them, but I can hear them and I can feel them around. For some of these spirits, it's unless they saw it, they wouldn't believe it. So they don't appear that way. That is my sign for, oh, this person's a non-believer. They obviously know now. For some of them, they like to bring it up for the recipient or their loved one who's receiving the message. It validates these really intimate personality traits that truly, unless you knew this person intimately, you're not going to know. I don't know if the guy that I'm paying for my petrol likes to talk about ghosts or anything like that. It's just a guy at the petrol station.
Yes.
Unless you know somebody intimately, those details, those personality details, only your loved ones are really going to know. And sometimes I don't even see them in human form. Sometimes they'll just come through like balls of energy. Guardian angels, spirit guides, sometimes they don't even need to present as a human form because it's not really important. And sometimes I won't even share that stuff with the reader because it's not important. It takes
Mm,
attention away from the message. And so,
hmm.
they just show up however they need to get the message across because that's to me what's more important.
Yeah. Okay, one more question before we go back to the reading, because there was something very detailed and specific that you said to me that came through, and it was a person. She came through a number of times, and you couldn't seem to let her go. You described her to me as a past life version of me and what era she came from.
Mhm.
And I want to know, when you see her, is she wearing like ye olde day clothes? Like, do
Yeah.
you know that she's
Yeah.
from an era because you can see what she's wearing?
Yeah.
Or,
So
wow,
her, I could literally see her in the room. So her, I could see her with a corset. I could see her with the whole kit and caboodle. And those details are important for me to be able to identify, okay, this is you, but in a previous lifetime. And for those
yeah,
who might be wondering, well, how can you read that stuff? Time is it's a human made up thing. It doesn't really exist in the spiritual realm. So your past, your present, and your future selves, they're all interconnected. They're all interwoven within this great cosmic thing we call spirit. And you can access different timelines. So this particular timeline of from your past life was very prevalent in your reading because it was so poignant at lots of events that
it
is currently
was.
happening in your lifetime.
Yeah.
And if you've ever thought or ever wondered, like, why does this bad stuff keep happening to me? Or why am I so unlucky in love? Or why can't I just get rich quick? It's completely different to everybody. Sometimes it's just lack of knowledge in this lifetime, the know how to actually make those things happen. And sometimes it's a lack of discipline in, achieving your goals. And so it's not always past lives, it's not always woo woo. Sometimes it's mindset, sometimes it's practical know how. Every single person is completely unique and different. And that's what I love. I get the lucky joy when I'm in a session with somebody of seeing them holistically. I get to see your soul. I get to see what you're here to do in this lifetime. I get to see who you are today versus who you might be in the future or who you were in your past. It's so fascinating. And then the interconnectedness of not just past and present lives, but where that might take you in future lives is so cool. The whole thing I find fascinating.
Mm. Well, thank you for answering that. I was so curious how you were able to be so descriptive about her and who she was and why she was there. And I just wanted to know what you like, how did you see her?
You don't have the same face, but you definitely have the same body type. And as we would get into her story and she was sharing a lot about her details, she was also showing me visions of how her life was really hard and what people perceived of her. And then she would show me what her experience was like. And as I was seeing that, it was as if I was having memories in my own mind, so I can tell where her mindset was at and really kind of segregate the two, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, yeah. And a lot of what you said that she was presenting to you was so relevant to some things that are happening in my life right now. It was like, oof, full goosebump moment how accurate you were on some specific topics that came up.
Yeah. I always tell people, I'm like, it's not me, I'm just the middleman. It's all
Yeah.
spirit. It's all
Yeah.
spirit. I'm just the middleman. I'm only as good of a message deliverer as they are in presenting me the information. So, I pay homage to that version of you who really felt the need to not just support you in this lifetime, but I do feel as though, and this is typically what happens, is when we recorrect or when we heal past versions of ourselves, we can do that in this lifetime so that they no longer need to suffer, and future versions of ourselves no longer need to repeat that lesson because they've already had the growth that the soul
Mm,
needs. So yeah, those little topics can be really interesting, fascinating, even for me, even after
mm.
decades of doing this. And for you, what was that like? Like what? Because I don't know any different. I really don't know any different. So I would love to know, like, were you like this chick looks like a freaking crazy Fruit Loop? Because I
Well,
too have never experienced anybody else do that either in a session.
no. I mean, I didn't think you were a Fruit Loop, what you were telling me, because I was so open to just taking in what you were saying. I would love to do a deep dive conversation with you specifically on the topic of past lives and
Yes.
what that is, and why those versions of us still continue on through, future versions of our soul, spirit, and oh, so I have so many questions about this. It's a
I
topic I
love it.
know nothing about.
Yeah.
So when you were saying certain things in my reading, some of it was like, oh, really? But then others, I was just kind of like intrigued, like, if this is real, what she's saying, like, wow, she had a tough life. So there was something very specific that you said that you could not have known. We've never talked about this before. It wasn't really the topic itself, it was the words that you used to describe what she had been through and what she was experiencing. It was the words that you used to describe it. When you said those words, I had like full goosebump moment. And then I actually remember pausing you and saying like, hey, would it be important for me to share some information with you right now about this topic? And you actually said no. You said, let's keep going with the reading. You can ask a question at the end. I was like, great, okay. And when we did talk about it at the end, I said to you, okay, do you remember when she was there and you described what she was feeling from a specific incident that had happened to her that she'd shown you? And I shared with you that only a month or so ago, when I was doing some personal development work, some pretty deep personal development work myself, I had uncovered how do I say, an experience that happened in my childhood that has led to pretty much the entire way that I have behaved my entire life. And I had journaled and written about that like a month ago when I had uncovered this big, for me, it felt like a secret.
Mm.
Um, and the words that you used were the same words that I wrote down in my book when I journaled about it. And it was like a key word of how I have been feeling my whole life, but didn't realize it until recently. And you said the same thing. And I was like, how did she know that?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You will have to forgive me because when I do readings, once that reading is done, I completely forget.
Yeah.
So, as you were telling me, like, even when you were saying before somebody came through, I'm like, did somebody come through? I don't remember somebody coming through. I had to then remember it in that moment. So, even as you're sharing this, I feel clueless to understand what exactly was said, but also really like sometimes I feel like I'm hearing it for the first time, which blows my mind, but
Mm.
I don't know what was said. I just, I'm like, in awe that, and I'm not in awe of myself. I'm in awe of how incredible spirit is. Like, how incredible spirit is. And also, what I love even more than that, like if you were skeptical before your session, that would have changed you to
Yeah.
believer, surely.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There were a few things that you said right from the first minute of the
Wow.
reading where I was like, "Ooh, okay, Amanda, strap in. Here we go. This is on point." So, yeah, like you had me from the beginning.
I love it. Maybe without sharing, if you don't want to share specifics, but I'm sure, like I'd love to know. I'm sure the listeners want to know too. What was said?
Okay. Well, you shared with me that there was this past version of my soul person past life that had come through to you, and that she was from the Victorian era. And you shared with me her persona and how she was presenting to you, and that she was a combination of very, very angry and sad, and that she really just had this, like, you were doing this, you were pointing your finger and just saying that, like, she was so strong in how she was coming across to you and the messages that she was giving you. And then you started to tell me a little bit about her life and how she had had a husband, and they had this really fun, like, loving marriage with a couple of kids. They lived on a homestead, and then sort of all of a sudden he was forced to go to war, and he only had a short amount of time to show her how to look after the farm, how to do all the things that he did to take care of the family. And then he left, and he never ever came back, and she never knew what happened to him. And for the rest of her life, she never got over that grief of feeling like she'd been abandoned. When you said those words, I just got full goosebump moment, because the event that I did about a month ago, it was a very intensive, like 6-day personal development event where, if I could describe it in a few words, it ripped my entire life apart and then put me back together in a different way.
Wow.
And on day 2 of that event that I did a month ago, we dived into figuring out what are some of the childhood memories or traumas or things that have happened to us that have shaped how we are now as adults. And I uncovered something that I'd had an inkling of since I've been doing personal development, I'd had an inkling of, but never had, like, identified what the specific situation or person was. I just thought it was like a collaboration of people. And every time this particular thing happens to me, I get that same feeling. It was a feeling of abandonment when men leave my life. And there was, there's been some very significant events in my life with some significant men who, as a little girl and as a teenager and as a young woman, you, I guess, are attached to these men who are supposed to be people who protect you and love you. And
Mm.
when they've left my life, I have felt abandoned. And what that has done is it has shaped me. The gift in that is it's shaped me to be such an independent woman.
Yes.
I know how to look after myself, and I'm
Mm.
okay with being on my own and that sort of thing. And so when you pieced this together and you used the words like you felt abandoned and you never got through the grief of that when your husband didn't come home, and you've been carrying that in your soul up until this particular life now. I was like, holy shit. I literally wrote that in my journal 1 month ago.
Holy, I have goosebumps head to toe.
Yeah.
My legs, goosebumps everywhere. Whoa.
Yeah. So it was wild. And yeah, then you gave me some insight as to what my future looks like on this particular subject, and that she was ready to be healed from those feelings.
Isn't that just so incredible?
It
Oh,
was, it was.
oh man. And I'm so happy for her that she's going to receive that because I
Mm,
know you and I know that you will really nurture her in that way by just taking care of yourself in the here and now.
mm,
Which might blow a lot of people's minds if they're listening back to it, but it actually can be that simple that there are things, self care things that we can do now, self development, self love that we can do now that really will not just empower us in the moment, but empower and delete and heal things from our previous lifetimes. And I
yeah.
can't
I
wait
just,
to.
it was a really, really poignant thing for me as part of the reading. And something you said at the end, you're like, I don't normally tell people to come back and get a reading, but I feel like you need to come back in a few months from now and have another reading. And I'm kind of excited for that. Like now that I
So
have this information and
mm,
various other topics that came up as well, and a bit of guidance you gave me, I am like, oof, let's do a check in a few months from now.
I love that. And I will speak into that because it's rare that I do. I don't, I very much try to get the whole thing done in one session if I can. But I do specifically remember in your reading how much healing, and some things just take time. They just take time. It's not just the healing, there were other things that needed to be shifted as well in the here and now that will support you in your future
Yes,
endeavors.
yes, there was.
But like you said, we'd been going for so long. And I even want to speak into something that I just brought up because I feel like I could just hear her whispering in my ear as you were talking. And we talk about, a lot of us talk about past life healing. In that instance, sometimes I want you to think about a time where maybe you've said a prayer, you've said an intention, or you've simply said, I hope in the future I never experience this again, or I hope, one day I get to have my happily ever after. If you've ever had a moment in your life where you've thought that on a really deep level, I want you to know that it is almost your current version of yourself projecting into the future the hopes, the dreams, the desires, the wishes that you want for that future version of yourself. And when this bridge, I'll call it a bridge, when this moment happened for you where we're talking to your past life self, to the present self, that is almost in real time what it can be like to be in that moment, have a deep prayer, for yourself, really deep conversations for yourselves. And that energy is picked up in future versions of you. So
Mm,
even for where you're at right now, she may have in that timeline, in that moment, really been at that perfect frequency in her energy where she is really tapping into you saying, don't repeat this that I just did. And it's kind of what she was saying and giving you the heads up like, listen, I have walked the path where the kids grow up. I do things and I'm on my own. And while I can be independent, don't do what I did. We know this lesson. Let's look for another way while you still have the time and chance to, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
wow.
Yeah, so what I find beautiful is this full circle moment that you are making also this pledge to say, yeah, okay, we won't repeat that. We're not going to
Yeah.
repeat. I'm going to do the work now so that we don't have to repeat that.
Yeah.
And I just, there's
Yeah.
something magical in that, that just, I don't know about you, but it just draws me in, just draws me every single time. And every time it's different. Every
Mm.
soul is a completely brand new fingerprint. And I find it all so fascinating. So
There's just
fascinating.
so many levels of
Yes.
the messages, isn't there? I'm really excited to do another episode with you, literally just talking about past lives and what that all means and what they're here to gift through you, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that would be so interesting. So
Oh, fascinating.
honestly, there was so much more that I could share with you that's come up for me, and a few little downloads since then. But that was one particular thing that I really didn't expect to happen. I guess I never shared this with you, but I guess I did go into the reading thinking like, okay, I don't want to talk to my ancestors. I don't want to talk to anyone from my past. Like, this is totally about me. I just want to know about my future. Um, and so, yeah, like when she came in and just kept being there, and there was that whole subject of the past life thing, I was like, "Ooh, okay, I did not expect this."
Yeah. Well, no ancestors, no other loved ones came through. It was just you and you. It was all about you, all the versions of you.
Yeah.
So,
And maybe
yeah.
that's so perfect, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know how we were going to get what I wanted,
Wanted.
essentially.
Mm.
So in hindsight, that was really perfect.
Love that. I'm so happy for you, babe. I'm so happy for you. And I can't wait for the update. I can't wait for the update. Now, for viewers or listeners who are listening to this right now, the only time that that might happen in somebody's session is that they've got lots of work to do in the here and now. But sometimes you can get so much on your to-do list that looking for it will shift the whole trajectory of your future, which is what she wanted. She wanted things to be shifted so that cycles could be broken, patterns could be deleted,
Mm.
and so we could start fresh again. So even at that moment, had spirit shared, because it's not my choice, it's always spirit. Spirit tells me I'm the messenger. But at that moment, even if I had predicted your future, the healing, the journey that you will be on now until we have our next session, your path will radically shift. And that's exactly what she wanted. And I think it's what you
Mm.
wanted as well on a very deep level, you know?
Yeah, actually, ooh, I just got a little download. That makes a lot of sense, what you just said, because there were some specific topics that I wanted to talk about that I didn't share with you. And like I said before, in that first minute, when you were like tuning in and you were like, okay, I feel like we're going to talk about this topic, but then there's this big one here and it kind of connects them all together. And I was like, yes, okay, like she's on point. These are the three that I really want to go into. But when she came through and the overall message of what she was giving, the healing that needs to happen from the message that she gave will significantly change the trajectory of all the other topics that I wanted to talk about.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
and of which you covered in the like you talked about those topics as well, but they were, yeah, kind of like all related to this one thing. So, wow.
It's so cool. That's why after all these decades, I still love it. I find it fascinating, you know, and I still love to do one-to-one readings. It's just, it's never a dull moment.
Yeah.
Never a dull moment. It's always an interesting story. And your one was fascinating. And I'm glad that you have that clarity to understand, which I guess a lot of people who go to have readings wouldn't have that clarity to understand why would I need the second one. That is the purpose, is that sometimes we can do healings and it can literally shave like 2 to 3 years, sometimes a whole decade worth of challenging lessons that, quite honestly, we can nip in the butt in a couple of months and be done with it. And then what that means is it opens up the flow for ease and grace and peace to just ooze through our life like so effortlessly
That
that,
is the vibe that I'm here for. So
amen.
let's do more of that. We'll just fast track all this.
Yeah. And that's why, shadow work is such a big thing that we talk about. I feel like the spiritual industry is talking about this a lot more, but everything's kind of
Mm,
interconnected, where it's not just about healing things spiritually, it's about really having a look at four major topics. And these are the four bodies that we all have. We have the physical body, so our physical health, our mindset, our mental body, our emotional body, and our spiritual body. So we can't just look at one version of those four bodies and think, I'm going to fix this one thing and everything else is going to sort itself out.
yeah.
So that we don't repeat cycles and we don't have those hiccups, it's important for us to look at what are our physical ailments that are holding us back. You might have a sincere condition that comes with the body, like depression, bipolar, OCD, OCPD, all these physical things that are
Mm,
here for whatever reason in your life, sometimes to teach you resilience, sometimes to teach your family patience, or whatever that might look like. Then we've got the mental, the emotional, the spiritual body. And sometimes the healing isn't just on the spiritual aspect, it's the whole embodiment of all four.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that's
It's,
why healing spiritually is so much more than just
yeah.
crystals and chakras and
Yeah,
yeah,
that makes so much sense. And
yeah.
side note, I know we like haven't caught up since the reading. Like this is our first time.
Yeah.
So just gonna share with you
Mm-hmm.
that there was something so specific that you said in the reading that is like a physical ailment that I have lived with for many years. Do you remember what it was?
No, I feel like it might have been your back, but I have
Yes,
no idea.
yes,
Okay, okay.
yes, yes. So the back pain, and you actually, by memory, I think you got like a stabbing pain in your back
That's right.
during the reading, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, I've had back pain for like 15 years. Please tell me how to fix this.
But I think
But
on that day you were saying that it's like was
it
really
was.
elevated
It
that day.
was. It
Yeah.
was hectic that day. And so what you just said there, where, we will have legitimate physical ailments or things that are happening in our life right now. And I'm actually a true believer in um like yes, we can have physical things that have happened through injury or whatever, but
Yeah.
I do believe that we also feel things physically because of an emotional response, and that we can store emotional trauma in our body and we feel it physically. I'm a
Yes.
huge believer in that. um and so just wanted to share with you, because we haven't caught up yet, that I got this little download last night, and I had this thought come to me about something that I think that I would like to do as a gear shift for my career. And it all has to do with the chronic pain that I've lived with for so long.
I
And I
love
almost feel like, in a way, that this is going to be not only so healing for me, but it's kind of down the direction of the career path that you very specifically and strongly told me about, that I'm going to go on and do in the next few years. So
mm,
I don't know, Tui, watch this space
I'm
as
so
to
excited.
what is going to unfold from here.
I love that you just claimed that. I absolutely love that you claimed that into existence. Yes,
You heard
girlfriend.
it here first.
I love it.
It's
I
it's
love
an
it.
it's an accountability piece now.
I love it, babe. I love it.
Feel like we have covered it. We've had a really deep chat today about the reading.
I'm so looking forward to talking about past lives with you. It's a
I
subject that
know.
I love. And quite honestly, a subject that I thought was pointless for so many years in my career. I was like, we are not living in the past, we're living in the here and now,
Mm.
until I really understood how the past can help us. And that took me down a journey of understanding, well, if I can access the past versions of myself, why couldn't I access the future versions of myself too? And that is
Oh,
a game changer. That
twist.
energetically shifted so much for me.
Did you just segue into our next episode?
I think I did.
Wow, what a topic that's going to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks, listeners. Let us know what you want to hear next. And again, like always, I appreciate you for being here. Thank you, my love.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Bye, guys.